Hello, hi, and welcome to Tales from the Trenches with me and Lars. This talk is going to be a journey that Clever has been on for the past 3 years. I am going to be talking a bit about the soft values, the management decisions, all the boring stuff. I won't bore you too much with it, but it's going to be the start of it, the context for all the cool technical stuff that Lars will show you. So that's what you can expect from us today. Quick intro to Clever. How many knows Clever in here? Raise your hands. Oh, okay. So I was, before the show, I wasn't really sure if I needed to explain what an electrical vehicle was and a charge point and stuff like that. But just to be clear, Clever is Denmark's largest EV charging operator. So we put up charge points and we have electrical cars that come and charge their cars so that they can drive. We are a part of the Andel concern, so part of a larger complex of many different companies. And we are organized by the way of sociocracy. So we are a management-less company. We are called co-managed. And this means it's not very, it's kind of important for the story, but it means that we are organized by way of 25 different teams. 300 people, and in each of those teams we don't have a manager, so we don't have somebody who gets to decide everything that happens at that team. Everything is decided by the roles that are in that team, and if we need to have decisions made in that team, it's made in that team with those people in there. So we don't have managers, we don't have this power hierarchy in Clever, and it's really it's a great way of working, but it's also extremely frustrating in a lot of different ways. The most important part for this is that each team is fully autonomous in a lot of ways, and that reflects very well with the agile way of working, which we'll get to. We're 300 people now, so this is Clever today, and this is where we're at. And we're going to be talking a bit about where we were 2020 when Lars and I came on. I just put up the values here: trust, transparency, and equivalence. These are values that Clever inherit in all the different teams, and they're important because I don't know how many saw Damien's talk about your code is just a detail yesterday. Some of you. He had some points about you should do DevOps and you should have all these cool things. And there were some questions at the end of like, how do I get my manager to agree on doing test and production? And how do I get my manager to agree on all the cool things? And one of the things is trust. And it's one of those things that have made this journey possible in a lot of ways. But who are we? So I'm Emil. I am head of development at Clever. I just told you we don't have any bosses. I was hired 3 years ago as a manager and have transitioned since then into just being a developer on a team. But that was my start back then. I've been doing professional development for the past 15 years, and I'm a father of 3. I have twins that are almost 3 and a 5-year-old on top of that. So I didn't get a lot of sleep this night. So if I look a bit distraught, it's not because of you, it's because of the kids. Lars?
Yeah. My name is Lars. I'm external to Clever in a consultancy company called Delegate. I'm, as I write there, a veteran. I've been in the game for many, many years. The past 8-9 years solely on Azure, doing development from all sorts of companies. Also father to 3. Apparently you have to be a father of 3 to be here. Yeah, I think that's it.
The story begins. So the year is 2020. I just found out I was having twins back then. And I went into a panic, and I've been doing consultancy for a lot of years, and I was like, I'm gonna try the dark side. So I was looking for a job, and it was gonna be a coach job. It had to be easy, no consultancy, no 50 hours, no all of that. And I found Clever, and they were like, well, it's gonna be head of development, but it's more like you get to find 3 developers and build some software. And I was like, cool, this sounds like a nice, easy gig. And then it was Corona, so we couldn't really work at Clever. And it was, I think, 3 months in. Like I started at Clever, we were 50 people. We had one developer hired. We had 6 external consultants working on some software for the past 7 years. They had been building all sorts of software to kind of keep Clever alive. Back then, there wasn't really that many electrical vehicles. So it was more like a very, very startup, very, very, very gentle. And then 3 months after I started in 2020, our director or CEO came and said, what if we just triple the budget or quadruple the budget, because the market was exploding. We were selling a lot more charge points to customers than we were expecting. So the landscape in 2020, when this the story started, I came in and everything was cloud native. Thank God, we were in an Azure platform, and all the things that have been built there was very nice, and it was existing. It was event-driven, the existing platform that was talking to all of these charge points. We had about 10,000 charge points back then, and we were looking into a lot more, and we had to scale fast. It was like now or never. So we had a platform where we had been building it for the past 6 years. We didn't have had that much money, so we had a lot of technical debt. But I think the most important part here is that the reason why we succeeded the past 3 years was that we were already in the cloud, and we were running a service fabric, and we were running a service bus. So we had, everything was events, and that's both the good and the bad, because everything was events. So it was kind of a mess. And I was still just me. I hadn't reached out to Lars or anybody else. We had 6 external people on, 1 developer, and we were trying to get all of this to scale. And as I said in the last point, the market was exploding. We were really, really seeing a lot more electrical cars coming in, and we didn't really know how to start to scale this up. So the challenge that we're going to be facing here today, that Lars will walk you through, is it was summer 2020, and we had a decision to make. We were looking into rapid growth, and we had a new technology coming in that we needed to have implemented. So we were going up to a new protocol that would allow us to postpone the charges that people have. So when they come home, they would have their electrical car, they would put in their charger, it would charge at that specific time. And people, they come home at 5 o'clock, most expensive time to charge a car in Denmark. That was kind of one of the problems that we wanted to solve. And then also with the existing platform, we were seeing that it couldn't really handle more than the 10K charges we had on it. So it was a matter of figuring out what happens when we have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100,000 chargers on this platform. It needs to be stable, because people, they need to drive every day, and they need to go wherever they're going, and it needed to work. So the existing platform, just told you about, was event driven. It was service fabric. How many have worked with service fabric? I would suggest other technologies nowadays, but it's a platform that has some benefits, but it also has a lot of drawbacks, and we were seeing a lot of the drawbacks, and it was hard to work with. And then the rapid growth, we were really under heavy fire, which was great. I mean, we were onboarding a lot of new customers. We went from selling 40 charge points a week to 400 to about 1,000 at its peak. So, I mean, we were onboarding a lot of new stuff. And then we had this don't break anything. Because if there's one thing people don't like, it's that they can't drive their car. And we're really trying to impose on everybody in Denmark that it's going to be easy to drive an electrical car, and just come to us and we'll charge it for you. It's not a problem. So this is kind of the 4 things that we had. And as I said, I was looking into going on paternity leave. I was expecting twins. I had 1 developer. I had 6 developers I didn't know. And I was facing this challenge as head of development with nobody. And and we needed to do it by 1st of January. Actually, it was 1st of December, but it was a pretty tight deadline. So I needed to bring on somebody to help me with it, and I needed to bring in a new team. And the important part here is we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, but I had some things as a manager that I wanted to get done, because we weren't just building a new charge point management system. We were also doing a lot of development in the entirety of Clever. We had a whole CRM system, we had a new ERP system, we had websites coming out, we had an app we were building. So all of that still needed to be done on the side, and then we also had this problem. I've been a consultant most of my life. This is my first internal job, so there was a lot of things that I wanted to be different as a consultant when I brought them in. I mean, complete autonomy and full trust is one of those things that, I mean, if you've worked as a consultant, you come out and you're like, hey, this is how you're going to do it. And the customer is like, that's really nice. We're not going to do that. We're going to do something else, and you're going to do it. And you're like, okay, that might not be my first choice. But I really wanted to bring some experienced people in that knew what they were doing and then hand them the reins. I wanted it to be decoupled. It was going to be a system that was going to be running side with everything else that we had, because it was such a complex system that we already had. We needed something that could just tap into what it needed, but be itself. And then I have this no counting hours. As a consultant, it's been one of my primary pet peeves. I hate hours. It's the most, like, it kills every sort of initiative, and you sit there and you hassle with the customer, and it's like, is this 5 hours or is 50 hours? And now that's 95 hours. I'm not going to pay for those 5 hours. I didn't want any of that. And at the end, like, you build it, you run it. It's one of those things where, as a developer, I've tried it a couple of times, and the idea is that you don't have operations. Production is your environment. So you build it, you run it, it's all you. And the idea was to to place mandate and responsibility at the same place, so the developers had full autonomy. They could make their own decisions. It wasn't going to be hey, can I do this and can I do that? It's like it's your ass on the line if these 10,000 charge points doesn't work. And that was kind of what I was looking for. So luckily, I've worked with Lars before, and I've worked with John and a lot of the guys at Delegate. So I called them up and I was like, this is how we're going to do it, and they were on board. So I found a team, and I luckily this is kind of how we started in 2020. We had a challenge, we had a team to go in and fix it, and it was it's been a hell of a ride since then.
It still is. It still is.
And then I have the values again, and it's just one of those things. I know it's kind of soft, and it's one of those, but I want to emphasize that if you want to have a proper working development team, you got to give trust, you got to have honesty, and you got to have full transparency, and that's not completely easy. So if you see one of those things, you're like, my management will never allow me to do that. It's like, I had already chosen that I wouldn't have the time to sit and micromanage or do any of that, and I trusted Lars and the team completely. So they have had full autonomy for 3 years, building a pretty complex and pretty impressive system. Yeah. So this kind of sets the stage where we were, where we're going. We have this challenge, and I had this feeling when I was going on paternity leave for 3 months with the twins that this is kind of how it felt.
Yeah, it's fine. No worries.
Exactly. So, Lars?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So first of all, this is a team effort. We started out 3 guys on this, but over the years, a lot of people has been involved. And within that team, we take basically all the responsibilities. POs, Scrum Master, Tester, Ops, Security, and whatnot. And this is not the same as saying we cannot be governed by rules. Obviously, there's a security team within Clever. These rules are governed there. What we do is we usually use privileged identity management to do things. But when we go into this, it's about accountability, because we own it, we run it, and we need to be able to change it when it's not working. So it's you can't have accountability without having the ability to change the system at any given time. It is really, really important. You cannot just expect somebody on the other side to say, okay, we need to create an app registration because we need to have some OAuth set up, and a guy needs to set this up manually. It's not good. Yeah. So, and we've been at this for 3 years. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. So we've done Azure development for quite some time. So we also have some rules on how to do it efficiently, and especially on many of things don't do. Naming standards, for one, is really, really, really important. You can't get anywhere in the cloud without naming standards, because many of the resources that you have has to have a unique name. Yeah. So it's globally unique. You have to have naming standards. Based on these naming standards, we also always say as little configuration as possible. Most of our services only have 2 configurations. That's a environment name and an environment type. That's basically all we put in when we deploy something. Based on that, the deployment or the environment name would be enough for us to know which services we are talking to because of the naming standard, because we always know that the service, regardless of the environment, will always be named this, because there are rules for it. The same goes for app registrations, the app UI. We have naming rules for that. That means that we don't have to have any grids or anything in line in the code. We can basically generate this from the environment name. The type itself is, when you look at it, is more targeted the resources. So you have a production environment, for example. The production environment has certain number of cores and other stuff that you can set up, but dev test environments might have less because they're not required to do so much. And then we have, just as importantly, the local ones. So we run, when we do something in segue to one of the other points is the F5 experience. So simply you just take down the code, press F5, and you're up and running. It is something that's really, really important for us. So it's really easy to get people in, start working. You don't have to have a lot of access is requested from here and there, because the naming standards also dictates security groups. So all of it ties in together, and it's really, really powerful. It's really easy to get started. We also do, there was this session on topology, on the telemetry, open telemetry. We always abstract logging telemetry behind an interface, because it's really important for us to test it, because it's a vital part within the system. We need to make sure that these things are happening. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Getting back to this about if somebody else is responsible for creating, for example, app registration, you don't have the rights. Security will tell you somebody else needs to do it. We don't do anything manual, so we script it. It's much easier to pass on a script to somebody and say, execute this, because you execute it and it will do the same thing every time. Again, it's with the naming rules. It's very, very easy to do it for whatever environment you have. We even script when we need to set access between services. So it might not be something you're allowed to do in the pipeline when you deploy and setting up, but it's in there, so we always know it. So re-establishing an environment is really easy. Again, you point to the name of the environment, and you probably set the type as well. Yeah. And then the way that we are designing our services, obviously it also depends in which context you're running in, but basically our services is always contained within a resource group. So a service, when it owns a resource, it will be in that resource group. Nobody else. So that's the way you kind of find out who owns this. We don't have any resource without an owner. You always have to have somebody who is accountable for resources going haywire, service bus, all these kind of things. So it's a fixed part of what we do always. Obviously, that's also in naming standards. And the last point, it kind of got some smiles from people, and we had a discussion whether or not we could say this, but we celebrate failures. Yeah, it's good to fail. It's okay to fail, as long as you learn from it. Don't hide it. I mean, be completely honest about it. Sometimes you fuck up. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that, but you do. Just learn from it. Start thinking about a mindset of always saying, how do we avoid this? What kind of initiatives do we need to take here? There's no blaming, there's no anything else, just learn from it. Yeah. So it's kind of the core pillars for us and how we work. And I want to take you through this almost 3-year journey. And I thought it was good to just say, where are we today, right now? Yeah. So you can read it all there. There's a lot of chargers out there that we have. I just want to compare it to Tesla's worldwide charging network, just to give you a perspective in this. So it is large. It is really large. And some of the others is fine. There's a lot of messages running around the system, and it's growing and growing and growing. Yeah. And it is basically this target that we always look at, saying, how can we keep growing without getting into trouble? So some of the things that we are really emphasizing in the beginning is, if you want to scale out, you need to be able to partition or sharding, whatever. That's the only way you can scale out. Otherwise, you will run into problems of scaling up. Luckily, charge points or charging stations are a really good sharding or partition key in all of this. Yeah, good. So what Emil didn't say was that we were in on trial. So, okay, show me you can do this. 3 people, a deadline in 3 months. I think it was tomorrow, it's 3 years ago. I was 1st of September. 1st of December, we need to have this running. This is a completely new charger that we are installing. It requires a new version of the protocol. It's completely different. The old one was SOAP, the new one is WebSocket. We don't know anything about it. So that's what you have. We don't have any chargers for you that you can test against. So this is what you do. Yeah. So it wasn't really there. So just it kind of sets the stage in this, and obviously we were ready to take up the challenge. And I think the biggest issue here was the existing system. There was no information, there was no knowledge around it. Looking at it, I'm sorry to say, it was horrible. It was really event-driven to the extreme. There were so many service buses, topics, subscriptions, and you didn't know if it was really being used or not. You didn't know several things of the same type of messages was passed around, but on the same, on different topics, and for whatever reason, unknown. So it was kind of, that was my biggest concern, really. How how to do this. How are we going to introduce a new protocol that's conceptually so much different? We have this all about service fabric. So we are really saying go easy. There's no need for any Kubernetes or service fabric for doing something that should be really easy. Start easy. You can always evolve. So PaaS services, app services, functions, and whatnot, that will give you take you a long way without any problems, and you can still scale. So what it came down to was we had to implement this in parallel. So we had to do something that did not break the existing system in any way, because that has to be running. It has to be running all the time. And the first one was to get one charging station on. So, right, that should be doable. So we came up with this beautiful drawing. I did this last night. It's okay if you applaud. No. So what really we did was to say it's very simple. We put in a broker that could take messages from the new system and broker it into the old system. And that is kind of some of the advantages once you go event driven. Obviously, there are some trade-offs because you're going from one version of a protocol to another. So there's a loss of data, but that's okay because the existing system was still running. They still had the same insights. They could still use all of this. So one of the kind of funny things we did was in the beginning, we kind of, when you start out building the protocol, you obviously need both ends. So you need a charger and you need the backend. So not having a charger readily available, we started building some simulators. The thing is, when you build back both ends in a protocol, it always works. Yeah, because it's the same way. Luckily, I don't know, a month and a half in, we got some new charge points that we can locally start testing on, and doing all this is not that difficult. So in the end, it wasn't a big deal. The biggest concern was more like, what is the impact on the existing system? Because there was a dev environment or a staging environment, but nothing was in there. The system wasn't working for the existing one, the legacy. So we only had production. Yeah. So this hypercharger that was installed was finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So what we did was we said, okay, let's deploy this into production. Let's learn whatever we can learn from this, because we agreed on saying, okay, let's make all chargers free. Yeah. So we don't have to have it all running. We don't have to have all of it connected. We can simply say, just start out easy, see what we can learn from this. How is it working? And to be honest, it just worked. I'm still surprised in this case. We do have some hiccups. I want to point out a funny part in the legacy system. So they chose to, whenever you do a transaction, you have to return a transaction ID. They chose to have one global transaction counter. And that means that if somebody else is going to do a transaction outside of the legacy system, how the hell are we going to give them a transaction ID? Because we have to feed it back. So a colleague of mine did some investigations, and it was really weird. And it seems like there was an error here at some point, because somebody changed something. So instead of incrementing it, the value by 1, it's incremented by 100. All right, but that gives us about 100 or 99 values that we can pick, so we can kind of ensure that every transaction goes in will not conflict with the existing one. So we just picked an arbitrary ID and then say, okay, we plus it by 50. and we start from there. So it's kind of worked. Yeah, well, lucky us. So,
And just one note here is also that we were lucky that we went into production 2 weeks early. And we actually set up the charger for everybody in Aarhus where we're stationed, and it was free. But that meant that we got a lot of different actions. We got to test a lot of cars. We got into production. We got to feel how it actually worked on the system. So it wasn't like it was test and production on the brand new system with a brand new charger. And these hybrid chargers, they charge up to, well, this was back in the day, so it was 180 kilowatts hours. But also they cost 250,000 a piece when you set one up. So it was a lot of money that we were testing on as well.
yeah. We did find some hiccup with the vendor. I had to suggest them that they should use a JSON parser for writing JSON, because clearly they did not on the data they were sending. So we had to compensate for certain things, but that's okay. It's some of the things you find, and then they improve. It has to be mentioned that the whole ecosystem around cars and EV chargers is very, very immature. Yeah, so whenever you see Teslas and whatever they can do, they have a lot of years head start. It is, to say the least, not impressive what they can produce yet. But it's getting there. The quality is getting better and better. But there's a lot of hiccups. And once we hit the war stories, I'll tell you some of them. Yeah. So obviously, after doing that, we needed to kind of say, okay, let's start onboarding home chargers. Home chargers is not as important as the public network chargers, but for the one of the good benefits of these charging stations is if they are not online, they will record all the transactions, and once they get online, they will deliver it. So kind of like if we were down for a period of time, it's okay, we will not lose any data, we might just get in a bit later. Obviously, if they were implementing those features correctly. So, in order to do so, we needed to be able to get hold of the existing charge point. We need to roll out some configurations. We are running SOAP, and SOAP is a request-reply protocol. Basically, in the old system, we had to know how to call them. The master data in the system was lacking. So it was incorrect. It was you couldn't trust it. So this was a big deal to us, because how are we ever going to transfer those over? Yeah, I mentioned about losing the information around this, and then since we had the protocol offered new type of data that is not recorded in the old system, so especially under doing a transaction, we could start looking at a lot of other interesting measures. The team operating the networks really needed some insights there. So the way that we approached this was exactly the same way we did the other one, is to say, we can put something in and we can start observing what is happening. It turns out on the protocol itself, whenever a charge point boots, it sends out a message, and there's a lot of information in that message. You can see the vendor, the model, you can see the type of SIM card that's in there, the firmware version and whatnot. So what we did was say, okay, let's build a service and see how much master data we can auto-detect. Because we can't trust whatever is there. So let's just figure it out. Let's see what it says. What can we gain out of this? And this is something we put into production really, really fast, because there's no dependency in there. There's nothing. So we can do this. No worries. The same we do for to collect charging information. It was, we had a situation where we did one earlier attempt that didn't really work out, and then we did another one that kind of worked way better because of some design changes. But again, it's something that we do when we put something in fast. We try it out, we see how it plays, we can remove it, start a new one, try again. So the way that we store these kind of information is using event sourcing and Curios. Just to name one, back to numbers, the charging session today holds more than 1.6 billion events, still counting, still working. So we have basically data for 3 years in there. Yeah. Let's see what we have. This is a simple diagram again. Something that listens to information, store it. You have an API to start reading the data. And then we have something I didn't tell you about, because everybody needs a CLI, right? Azure CLI. Something this is really cool. Or at least that was the CIO of Clever said. Why do we need a CLI? Because it's cool, right, Ricky? No. So once you start running this and the operations and you have application insights, good telemetry in there, you can see it. We used Kustu on when we do custom queries to find out data and a lot of it, and it's working fine. What we don't have is an insight into the nodes itself. We had to build in something on a management plane so we could look into it, so we can reset WebSockets. There's a lot in there that we needed. It turns out it was a really, really good choice to do. It also abstracts the need for you to have direct access to certain resources, databases and whatnot, so you can go through a management API. So it's more secure that way. I have to say that this is perhaps the most useful tool that we have built. We use it often. We use it to automate processes, because there's a lot of things in there. Sometimes we need to change something, then we need to ensure that certain configuration is as it should be, and we should tag charging stations. We should do all sorts of things here. So it's really, really, really useful.
And I also think it's worth noting this is one of those things where I think a lot of teams would get a no. Like, so I figured out we're going to build a CLI for this thing. Like, how much does it cost? And how it was more of Lars came and told us, like, I built a CLI. Like, as you said, what do we need it for? And it turns out it was a great idea. But I think for a lot of different teams, for a lot of different reasons, it might have been one of those features that would have been put in the bottom of the backlog.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do is we always reserve the right to spend 20% on any refactors that we want to do. Yeah. So there's no one from the business that can say you cannot do this. We don't have to ask for permissions to refactor. If I have to if I had to tell how many times we on the call part of the notes and how it's communicating service bus and whatnot, we refactored this, I mean, that would not be good. But it all has to be about learning how to improve all the time. And it's just, if you are accountable, you should have the right to choose that this is what you need to do, because it's more important for the production. Obviously, all of this comes with a huge responsibility. So if you're not up for it, by all means, but it obviously also takes some proven, you need to prove that you can do it. The more you prove it, the more leeway you get, the easier it is. No. Don't want to do? Thank you.
Click.
So, the sunflower.
Dun dun dun.
We so we did some skunk work behind the scene, because the existing system had a awful UI front end to start working with things. So we started doing some of our own. So it was called the Sunflower. Really not to upset anyone in the business when we talked about anything. Sunflower is a nice name. So it kind of stuck on this one. So we needed to get some way of visualizing everything we have in there.
Click.
Click. Fine. So I took this morning. This is on the dev environment, so I don't want to show anything I'm not allowed to show. But it's just a front page in this, just to show you that this is some of the things that we also do, and it's highly appreciated in there. And we spent an enormous time designing, redesigning, finding out what's good for the business together with them, seeing how they're using it, measuring it, changing it, coming up with new ideas. But also we have a UX that's kind of, and I think that's the next slide. They get really excited. Sunflower, something, and we have some UI goodies. So click. So this is what they saw in production. At some point, we started having a bit of fun doing some animations, doing this. It's just to bring some life to it, and then we really wanted to have the page you saw before being the page that if they want to know how is the network doing, are there any problems or anything, they look there. It's kind of startup. If they have any questions, start there. Yeah. The data is live, and yeah, they can kind of click. I keep saying that. Right. So back to what Emil said about growth. So it came on a bit later, but we were really skyrocketing. There was this immense amount of new home chargers coming in. At the same time, we were far from done with migrating 10,000 existing ones, and this is every day. Yeah. So it's not just having something hooked up, it's configured correctly, troubleshooting if there's any issues. Might want to change the SIM card if the SIM card is bad and you need to use another one if the signals are bad. It's just enormous amount of things there. Some of them will pop up with a really old firmware version. Some of them we know, okay, you can't migrate, you have to physically log into the charger itself and upgrade it that way. Just ask how many. I literally thousands of logins I've done to fix and get them up and running. Yeah.
And at this point, we had about 200 to 300 electricians driving every day, setting up home chargers at people. And every time they set up a home charger, it would spin up and would contact the system, and it needed to work. And they needed to have some sort of way to figure out if it was working, if it wasn't working, and if it wasn't working, why wasn't it working? So it was really a matter of catch up. Like building something that is scaling at the same time as we are onboarding all of these customers. And at the end, the customer just wanted to work. Like they didn't care if the electrician couldn't get it to work or if the system didn't work or whatever the reason was.
So one of the downsides of this is the old system was still running. We were still passing all the data, broke all the data into that system. So more and more frequently, it started breaking down. The service bus could not be filled up. The services could not cope with it on that side. So it kind of gave us a bit of a headache on how do we do this, because we're still in the process of building the new UI. They still work on the old one. So we had kind of to take some decisions and leave out certain type of messages, heartbeats, some some meter values, other stuff that's okay, it's not important. So we can keep the old system running, because the old system still had all the public network, which is really, really important to have running. It kind of gives some problems there. Yeah, click. So once you're growing in all of this, you also need to provide better insight. So it turns out running home chargers or chargers, is kind of like the same as running software. Yeah. Because you're interested in the messages in there, you're interested in failures, you want to look at what might be wrong. Is it a long response time? Why is it failing here? It's not authorizing. It's kind of the same. Are there exceptions in there? It's kind of the same thing. So what we did was we chose to say, that's good. We can listen to all the messages. We can store it, and we store it in Cosmos. We really like Cosmos in this. And then say, okay, it's there for 90 days. But again, if you access the data, it's there really fast within these 90 days. You can get it right away. We also added a bit of a twist to it, so you can get a lot of messages and you can quickly lose oversight. So what we did was we kind of said, for each message coming in, let's do a representation on all the properties of the charge point. The connector status, if it's charging, how much is it charging, and all these kind of information. But that requires us to read up the state, pass the message in, write it down, read it up, write it down. It's kind of, it's fast and you can do it. Cosmos, it's a bit expensive, but it's working, it's doable. The business had a hard time adjusting to new ideas and how to do this, but they came to really like it. We found out when we changed it again. They were really not happy, but okay. And then the other thing that was really a concern was to know, is a charge point online? Is it online? Does it have to, do we have it? And if it's not online, should it be online? Because these are, and it can be really hard to answer, because if you don't have, if the quality of the master data is not good, then it's really difficult to kind of answer here. But some of the things that we want to help was to say, okay, let's do some give some possibilities to start querying into these data. But it was taking data from many data sources. What we came up with was, and the name was availability service. It's not really a good name for this, but it started out as being, we need to see how available the chargers are. That's why they had that name. It still has. I'm betting Ricky wants to change it. So go ahead. But what that does is it talks to all the systems when it boots up into memory, start listening to the service buses for getting information when something changes. And it builds it up in the memory. So when you query it, it's really, really fast and always up to date. The downside is when you start it up, it takes a bit of time to go and pick up the data. Start listening to this. But it's really working quite well for us. These kind of features here, it is, yeah, you can see ongoing transactions, you can see firmware up, you can see we have a lot of what we call indicators that basically are different ways of looking at data to see if a charge point is healthy. There's any odd ways, even though it's not giving you any errors, that it's not behaving well. Example could be that you have a charger that people are trying to start a transaction, but are not able to complete it, meaning that they are charging less than 500 watt or kilowatts. These kind of things kind of indicates there might be something wrong, even though it's not telling you. Yes. So I think you can skip that one. That was one. Yeah. So increasingly, the problem with the analytics service that we had was on Cosmos was growing in number of messages as we're doing all the time. Kind of required us to keep cranking up the request units, and it was getting rather expensive. So expensive that it was the most expensive part at all in all the system. So we had to do something, and it was right in front of us because we were already using it through application insights. But Azure Data Explorer, which is the technology behind all of this, really had the key indicators, the key behaviors that we needed. So you can tell it, okay, ingest a lot of data, but keep 30 days in memory, so it's really fast to query. Later, it will take longer, but you can have years and petabytes of data and you can still query it. You can query across charge points, because everything, when we're doing this in Cosmos, you have to partition, otherwise you run out of space. So we didn't know if this would be good enough for us. We didn't know if the ingestion time would be fast enough. But you can see application insights, it has a delay of 5 minutes. That's definitely not good enough. So what we did was we deployed it into production. We set it up, try it out, start listing. Yeah. Turns out it was really, really, really fast. Right now, with these 827 million messages a month, we have an ingestion time of less than 300 milliseconds. Yeah, and it was for a quarter of the price of Cosmos. And that's not even the biggest benefit. The biggest benefit is we can basically do cross-partition queries in any way we want. It is, and I encourage you, it's an absolutely fantastic tool if you look into this. Click. Click. Yes, this one, that's Soul Signal or Sunflower. So this is based on, I would love to give you a real demo of this, but it's powered by ADX. By accident, we have at Clever's headquarters that there's a hypercharger there that is sending a meter value every second. Somebody's charging. So we're kind of like, okay, that's a bit scary, but let's see how we cope with this in production. So doing this, start drilling down to these transaction sessions, following, you can see how many amps, there's a lot of info. But the thing is, it is fast, it is smooth, and it does a lot for you in interpolations, time series, and all of this. So obviously we put a lot of effort into making it look good and help identifying a lot of issues. So if I had to say today, that's the coolest technology that we have there in that. I'm really so glad, because it serves so many things. It serves if we want to look into the occupancy on a charging station over time. It's really, really fast. Yeah. My sales pitch. Click. So, as promised, war stories. Anybody here familiar with the thundering herd problems? Accounting for not you, but yeah. Oh, okay. So imagine you have 60,000 devices out there going through one gateway, and for some reason this gateway is shut down for maintenance. Something it's just turned. Microsoft is rolling out a fix, and since it's WebSockets connection, it's a connection, it will be broken. Now, what will happen on all these? As soon as their connection is broken, they'll try to reconnect. Doing that 60,000 reconnect at one point in time, that's a thundering herd problem, because it really stresses your system. It is not fun. And it comes in many forms and shapes. These and there are many ways of solving it. Hang on, I'm just going to read up on all my points here. So, one of them, early on, we, after having the CLI in place, we could kind of query saying, okay, how many connections do we have per node, and what are the IDs of them? There's a lot of fun things in there. Can't remember exactly how we found out, but at a certain point, we kind of had the same charge point connected twice, 2 different nodes. It shouldn't be possible, because the problem is, if you want to send a command, you need to, on which connection can we send, if we want to talk to this, that's weird. So I want to say that it wasn't my idea, but we came up with a solution. Ricky implemented it, so in Git history it's his fault. But what we did, what we did was we said, okay, fine. So if something is connecting in, we have a service bus. It's just push it out there and say, okay, ID X is connected here with on this timestamp. And then the other nodes could just listen to it and say, okay, if I have the same X here, but the timestamp is older, just dump it. Just stop the connection. Easy peasy. So quickly into production, because that's the only place we see this. So it worked. We're happy. It really worked. Because we could see that we didn't have double connections. Now, people were starting complaining there was something wrong. They couldn't kind of send any messages. It turns out that the firmware running on these home chargers kind of said, that's fine if you disconnect me. I just reconnect. So we go, oh, I gotta reconnect. Please disconnect. No, I disconnect. I want to reconnect. Disconnect. I want to reconnect. They were kind of so eager that some of them kind of had up to 10 connections. Website, same one. So really, it was a spiral. It just went really nuts. And whenever a charge point connects in, we at the time was writing it down to Cosmos to kind of say, okay, this ID you can find on this node. Kind of like a DNS. So you know, if you hit one node, say I want to talk to this ID, it will say, okay, it's not me, but I can redirect you to the right node that has it. So it started being really expensive, starting a lot of errors in there, and it's just fully haywire. So luckily, since it's service bus and you have subscriptions, you could go in on a subscription and say just 1 equals 2, and the subscription effectively is just disabled. So we kind of stopped that one. The problem from the chargers didn't stop there. I was one night before Easter, I was called up, and kind of there was panic, saying one of the SIM card vendors was down. We lost 20,000 charge points. What? So effectively, what they had is was the charger itself was using a DNS to look something up, and it was doing an effective DDoS attack on the SIM provider's internal DNS. So basically, it shut the whole thing down. So that was another story there. Let me see. Yeah, time. Okay. So. In the end, what we did was that there was a lot of other scenarios as well. There's a good point here that sometimes if you see some odd behaviors, you might want to look on some of your dependent resources. For example, Event Hub, if you try to publish a message, it will be so nice and kind to you that it will wait until it can deliver that message. So if you're in need of capacity on the Event Hub, kind of you don't have any errors, you might want to look at response time. We had the application gateway start running up and connecting. It wasn't on the outside of the application gateway to the chargers, they were fine. Internally, we at some point had 500,000 WebSocket connections to our node. The good thing about it is we were scaling. It worked. Yeah. So we decided to kind of take the matter into our own hands. So right now, we only allow a fixed number of connections at a given time. And when I say connection, it's the initialization of the connections. We do when it connects, we do a lot of security checks and whatnot. And once we are ready to start receiving, then we release the lock. And it kind of, so regardless of how it works in the wild, it's not a problem for us. We can still handle it. Anything else? I think that's it. Yes, last one. So it's just some some takeaways if you can, and it really helps us. This is about automating, really, everything. High standards, keep at it. Yeah, even if it's unmature services, keep at it. It will bring so much value to you. I guarantee it. We've tried this many times. Anything else? This about accountability is really important to us. So if we kind of can convey some of the responsibilities, some of the things that you might want to argue, it is. So it comes with a lot of responsibility. You have to be prepared to take it. Yeah. So, and we're doing it. The entire team is doing it. There's no one, even if a junior comes in, they will have the same responsibility. They are doing the same thing we might have. We will help them. We will support them in this. But it's an effort together. Yeah. What else? Basically, this again. Don't go Service Fabric or Kubernetes if you don't need it. Yeah. Really keep it simple. It can scale for you.
And learn from your mistakes.
Learn from your mistakes. Always. Again, we're also celebrating deleting code. So there was one with Damien that says about it's okay to have dead code, but we're celebrating removing code. So any PR that deletes something, that is good.
And I think we're a bit over time, but else we would take questions.
Apologize.
But I think that was everything for us. Thank you.